In the heart of the Baltic Sea lies a little-known archipelago that could become a major flashpoint between Russia and NATO. The Alland Islands, an autonomous region of Finland, have suddenly found themselves at the center of geopolitical tensions as Finland joins the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Let's start by understanding the geographical location of the Alland Islands and their context within Finland's proximity to Russia. This archipelago consists of over 6,700 islands, though only about 60 are inhabited. The main island, also called Åland, sits at the entrance to the Gulf of Bothnia between Finland and Sweden. Its strategic position gives it control over the sea lanes into the Gulf, making it a crucial choke point in the Baltic Sea. The islands are closer to the Swedish mainland than to Finland, lying just 38 kilometers east of the Swedish coast. Despite this proximity to Sweden, the Alland Islands have been an autonomous region of Finland since 1921. This unique status came about as a solution to a dispute between Sweden and Finland over the island's sovereignty. To fully grasp the strategic significance of the Alland Islands, we need to consider Finland's geographical relationship with Russia. Finland shares a 1,340-kilometer or 832-mile land border with Russia, one of the longest borders between Russia and any European Union country. This extensive border runs from the Gulf of Finland in the south to the rugged terrain of Lapland in the north. The proximity of Finland to Russia has historically been a major factor in Finnish foreign policy and defense strategy. At its closest point, near the southeastern city of Imatra, the Finnish border is just about 7 kilometers or 4.3 miles from St. Petersburg, Russia's second-largest city and a key strategic location. The Finnish capital, Helsinki, is only about 300 kilometers or 186 miles from St. Petersburg. In the context of the Alland Islands, while they're situated in the western part of Finland and thus further from the Russian border, their strategic importance is amplified by Finland's overall proximity to Russia. The island's location in the Baltic Sea, combined with Finland's long border with Russia, creates a complex geopolitical scenario that affects naval and air operations in the region. Moreover, the Gulf of Finland, which separates southern Finland from Estonia, is at its narrowest point only about 52 kilometers or 32 miles wide. This narrow body of water is a critical access point to the Baltic Sea for Russia, particularly for its naval base in St. Petersburg and its Baltic Fleet operations. The Alland Islands, situated at the entrance to the Gulf of Bothnia and relatively close to the Gulf of Finland, thus form a crucial part of the broader strategic picture in the Baltic region. Their demilitarized status has long been seen as a stabilizing factor in this sensitive area, where Finnish, Swedish, and Russian interests intersect. Now, let's delve into the military status of the Alland Islands, which is at the core of their strategic importance. The islands have been demilitarized since the end of the Crimean War in 1856. This status was further reinforced by the 1921 Åland Convention, an international treaty that declared the islands as a neutral, demilitarized zone. Under this convention, Finland is prohibited from building fortifications, establishing military bases, or maintaining any military presence on the islands during peacetime. The inhabitants of Åland are also exempt from military service, although they can volunteer to serve in the Finnish military if they choose. This demilitarized status has been respected for over a century, even during World War II when Soviet forces briefly occupied the islands. However, the changing geopolitical landscape in Europe, particularly with Finland's accession to NATO, has brought the strategic importance of the Alland Islands back into focus. So, why are the Alland Islands of concern as Finland joins NATO? There are several reasons. One of them is the strategic location. The island's position at the mouth of the Gulf of Bothnia gives them control over vital shipping lanes. In a conflict scenario, whoever controls the Alland Islands could potentially block access to key Finnish and Swedish ports. Another reason is the proximity to Russia. The Alland Islands are relatively close to the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad, home to Russia's Baltic Fleet. This proximity makes the islands a potential forward position for NATO forces, which naturally concerns Russia. Another reason is the vulnerability of the islands. The demilitarized status of the islands, while intended to prevent conflict, also makes them potentially vulnerable to a swift takeover in the event of hostilities. The change in Finland's status is also a big reason. Finland's decision to join NATO fundamentally alters the security landscape in the Baltic region. The Alland Islands, as Finnish territory, are now technically part of NATO, despite their demilitarized status. And the legal ambiguity with regard to the 1921 Alland Convention, as it predates both NATO and the European Union. There's debate about how this treaty interacts with Finland's new NATO obligations, particularly in terms of collective defense. Russia has expressed concerns about Finland joining NATO, and the status of the Alland Islands has been a part of this discourse. From the Russian perspective, NATO's expansion to Finland brings this alliance's potential military presence closer to its borders. The Alland Islands, if militarized, could serve as a strategic outpost for NATO forces. On the other hand, NATO and Finland argue that bringing Finland into the alliance enhances regional security and stability. They maintain that the move is defensive in nature and not aimed at threatening Russia. The current situation raises several questions about the future of the Alland Islands. Will the demilitarized status of the islands be maintained, or will there be pressure to revise the 1921 convention? Another chilling question is how will NATO's Article 5, which promises collective defense, apply to the Alland Islands given their unique status? Or could the islands become a bargaining chip in broader negotiations between NATO and Russia? And how will the inhabitants of Alland, who have enjoyed peace and neutrality for generations, be affected by these geopolitical shifts? As of now, Finland has stated its intention to respect the Alland Islands' demilitarized status. However, there have been discussions about potential gray zone activities, such as increased Coast Guard presence or the establishment of dual-use infrastructure that could serve both civilian and military purposes. The situation surrounding the Alland Islands highlights the complex interplay between historical agreements, changing geopolitical realities, and regional security dynamics. As Finland integrates into NATO structures, the status and future of the Alland Islands will likely remain a topic of diplomatic discussions and strategic planning. Now that you're caught up on the situation between Russia and NATO, let's dive into the latest twist: the Storm Shadow missiles. Recently, NATO has added another potential flashpoint in the ongoing tension between Russia and Ukraine. The United States and the United Kingdom are considering lifting restrictions on Ukraine's use of long-range missiles, including the Storm Shadow, which could stir things up even more between Putin and the West. For those wondering what these Storm Shadow missiles are, here's a quick breakdown. They're long-range air-launched cruise missiles, which means they're fired from military aircraft rather than from the ground. These bad boys can hit targets up to 250 kilometers or about 155 miles away. If Ukraine were to use them from its own airspace, they could potentially strike deep into Russian territory. And with the US and UK reviewing Ukraine's request to lift restrictions, Russian targets in cities like Kursk, Milerovo, and Rostov might become easier for Ukraine to hit. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that if Western countries authorize Ukraine to use long-range missiles against targets within Russia, it would signify direct involvement in the war. In a statement to Russian state media, Putin asserted that such a move would mean NATO countries, the United States, and European nations are directly participating in the conflict, dramatically altering its nature. He hinted that Russia would then be compelled to take appropriate actions, though he didn't specify what these might entail. This threat has raised concerns about potential escalation. In conclusion, while the Alland Islands have been a peaceful and neutral territory for over a century, their strategic location and unique legal status makes them a potential flashpoint in the evolving relationship between Russia and NATO. As tensions in the Baltic region continue to simmer, the fate of the small archipelago could have outsized implications for European security. The challenge for all parties involved will be to navigate this complex situation in a way that maintains regional stability, respects international agreements, and addresses the legitimate security concerns of all stakeholders. As we move forward, the Alland Islands serve as a reminder that even small, seemingly insignificant territories can play crucial roles in shaping the geopolitical landscape. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into why the Alland Islands are becoming a Russia-NATO flashpoint. If you found this video informative, please like and subscribe for more geopolitical analysis. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content.